For Sunday, July 3rd, you have found the Georgia Gang. Topping our agenda today, Atlanta murders are rising, the Braves in traffic again, and a hot congressional race. These and other topics on the Georgia Gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
Good morning and happy Independence Day for tomorrow. We have got as our guest today Jennifer Hazelton, welcome back, and Jeff Dickerson and Alexis Scott, our regular panelists. I wanted to start right away with probably one of the top stories of the week, and that is the rising Atlanta murder rate and, of course, the spike in shootings. And just last Wednesday, the mayor and Chief George Turner had a news conference, and I think it was just last week, Alexis, I said the police have to get more aggressive, and that's what the mayor said. And so I'd like to go down the table here and get everybody's comments on what we can do about this.
Well, I think the mayor at that press conference that he had talked about several action items that they were going to undertake to address this issue. And I think the acronym is SOAP. What is it? Summer Operation Action Plan. And it involves additional police officers in targeting certain neighborhoods that have high incidences of gun violence and also murders. And just generally looking at the issue of gun violence, which I think is really a time to do that. The gun culture here in Atlanta and the nation is really terrible. A terrible problem, and there needs to be some effort made to address it and to control the use of guns. And you know, they're just too prevalent and too easy to get.
Jeff, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think that you have to consider it in the context of, first of all, where we've been. You know, you look back at the 80s and 90s when we had a sky-high murder rate across this nation, particularly in the major cities. And now what you're seeing are spikes, but nowhere near where they used to be. So that's the first point. Second point,
well, except for murder. Except for murder.
No. We just don't have the murder levels that we had in the 1970s, 80s. And
yes, but over the last 10 years, we've had the spike.
And we've had spikes, but we haven't had a as consistent a murder rate. And then when you look at the efforts of John Lewis, both on the House floor and last week at Ebenezer, to try to really address this gun problem. And I think that people hear that another way, and that is to try to address the violence problem, right? Because you can have a gun and not be violent. I've got lots of guns, and I haven't shot anybody recently. And so I think that when you bring attention to these issues, you know, that's a good thing. And people have suggested that I should Phil, but I'm not going to do it.
Thank you.
There would be too many witnesses.
That would be wrong.
But you know, I think that when you bring attention to guns and a violent society, as John Lewis has done, and admirably so, you're going to see, I think, a change in these in the positions, as well as a more aggressive policing overall.
Well,
that's what the mayor's all about.
This is clearly scary stuff, and it's not just the statistics, but it's what we're seeing at Lenox Mall in the last few weeks with carjackings of innocent shoppers, a woman with her grandchildren, a young mother the other day just got shot when she and her fiance and their young son were attacked. This is not, you know, the everyday kind of crimes that we've been typically used to in Atlanta. When this type of violent crime starts creeping into very widely trafficked public areas like Lenox Mall, people are going to start getting concerned. And I think that, yes, the mayor has this task force. Let's just be real. The people who are going around carjacking people at Lenox Mall and committing other crimes are probably not licensed gun owners. I think what we may need to do is look at some of the things that were done in the 90s to start reversing the trends that you were talking about, like Mayor Giuliani of New York's broken windows approach, nipping small crimes in the bud because the view was small crimes lead to bigger crimes.
I agree with that. Absolutely.
Well, I think that's
I think we all agree on
essentially
that.
what the action plan calls for, particularly targeting high crime area neighborhoods to do that. But I also think it is a wider cultural issue that does need to be addressed, and I think that's something that John Lewis is continuing to try to address.
Well, as Jennifer says, outlaws are going to get guns no matter what. Now, I was glad to see the mayor. I was glad to see the mayor also point out better coordination with the state and with the
federal.
feds, because as we've talked about on the gang, there's been a rising gang activity. And we're talking about youngsters as young as 8, 9, and 10 getting into these
the mayor's
gangs.
been tough when it comes to recidivism. And, people who've been in jail, getting out of jail immediately. I mean, this revolving door down at the courthouse. And that is a serious problem.
Well, it is, and I'm glad that was
we can
addressed.
identify.
Well, and it's not just Atlanta. I mean,
Right.
DC's going through
Right,
this, New York's
exactly.
going through
Chicago,
this.
right.
There's been a general sort of going away from the policies that sort of got us back on track in the 90s and the early 2000s. Maybe there was a false sense of security, and maybe, I'm just throwing this out there for conversation, but if law enforcement is sort of letting up on that approach of going after small crimes to prevent bigger crimes, maybe that's opening the door again, and maybe we need
Or
to close
letting
it
up
back
on community
shut.
policing, because a lot of that broken windows approach was more community policing.
Well, you're right, Jeff. Let me segue into some new laws that have gone into effect just July 1st, and one of them has to do with guns again, Alexis. 18-year-olds now on all of Georgia's public colleges can have tasers and stun guns. You in favor of that?
No. I think that's part of this gun culture, this culture of being armed.
But can't you defend yourself? Don't we have the right to defend ourselves? Jeff, what about that?
It was a campus carry light thing. It's not the same as owning a gun on campus. We've had a spate recently of alleged rapes on college campuses. I think that a young lady should have the opportunity to protect herself on a college campus. This is a way of doing it without arming everybody on campus with 38s and
guns.
45s.
Do you agree with
This
that?
is one area where Jeff and I actually are in complete agreement. I think that we have seen a dangerous, not only are these alleged, well, they're not alleged, these people were convicted. So the recent rapists of the Indiana University student and the Stanford student, it's sending the message to women that the justice system isn't going to necessarily have their back when they're attacked by their peers on a college campus. So if we give women the ability to protect themselves on a college campus so that they don't have to end up enduring a vicious crime and then face the fallout of what happens to the crimes as they're adjudicated in the criminal justice system, I'm all for it.
Yeah, it goes back to the culture of violence. Rape is a violent act, and generally these instances on campus have been people that they know. It's not a stranger assaulting you just out of the blue. So I think, again, it goes back to this culture of violence that we have that we just really need to address.
Well, let me go to another news item that we saw last week, and probably not that big a surprise, but did you see where Interstate 285 that loops around the city of Atlanta was labeled by several organizations as the most dangerous highway in the country? And of course, as you know, if you just go the speed limit on I-285, you're in serious trouble.
Yeah, you get left behind or in the dust or on somebody on your tail.
I know it. Jeff, you and I follow transportation fairly closely. Any fixes in the works in the future?
Well, I think that probably those electronic speed limit times were supposed to be a partial fix, and from my experience, it just don't seem to work.
Yeah.
You can have a sign that says 35 in one spot, and a
65.
couple of yards later it says 65. So you don't know what the speed limit is. It's almost like, without knowing what the speed limit is, you just choose one, right? And I think that that's what people were doing.
That's
Make
not
them
good.
up as you go.
I think that that's what people were doing on 285. Now, it was a dangerous interstate before that,
It's a
right?
mess.
Well,
let's
and
just be real about it.
some of the merge lanes are too short too.
Oh yeah, wait
Yeah,
till the Braves
that's always
Stadium opens
scary.
up. That's
Well,
gonna be
and we're going to
fun.
be talking about that during the next segment. So thank you for saying that. So stay with us on the Georgia Gang.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
Welcome back to the Georgia Gang. I'm Phil Kent, sitting in for Dick Williams. And there was a news item this past week. In fact, it was just last Sunday that the Panama Canal got widened officially. And of course, we know that this is going to help Georgia, Savannah, and Atlanta.
Even Atlanta.
Jeff, you and I have referred to even the city of Atlanta as a port city. What do you think?
It is, but we're not going to get a river here, I don't think, anytime soon. You know, one of the ironic things about this is that we're getting this huge infrastructure buildup at a time when world trade is really slowing down.
It's true.
Right? and who would have thunk it?
Right.
You know, that you invest these billions of dollars into this infrastructure, not just in Panama, but in Savannah and other, ports around the world.
Charleston is really, yeah, that's right.
Well, around not just the United States, but around the world, right?
Right.
That can handle these super tankers, but we're not.
There's nothing to fill them.
We're not shipping goods like we used to be shipping goods when this idea was broached many years ago. So,
Yeah, but it's a long-term play, and
is.
shipping, ocean shipping is not going away. And right now on the east coast of the U.S., there are 3 ports that can handle these big boats: Baltimore, Norfolk, Miami. And if Savannah doesn't expand, we're going to lose business, because these shipping companies, I think they save 20 to 40% by using these bigger boats.
Right.
They're going to continue to use these bigger boats.
oh yeah,
So
and we're
we
going
don't
to
have a
expand.
choice.
I think that we're dredging. We're in the process, and
Yeah,
we're
and
gonna get it done.
Savannah's core competency in the
Right.
port industry has always been to be very efficient in the unloading and loading of these ships, and we're going to lose that core competitive advantage if we don't complete this
It's
project.
also, I think it will be interesting to see what happens with the president's, Pan-Pacific trading policy.
Trans-Pacific Pact, which-
yeah,
TPP.
TPP, which is a policy that is, on the discussion table, but it depends on who, I guess, gets elected president.
Of course, whether
it
that
will
passes
move
or not,
forward.
you still have all of these trade deals that are going to be going on no matter who's president. Let me segue, though, to Sandy Springs and the Braves. I know we talked about traffic a minute ago. Again, this past week, I saw where Sandy Springs City Councilman Andy Bauman said that Cobb County, neighboring Cobb County, right across the river where the stadium is not been very receptive to Sandy Springs when it comes to on game days when that traffic will spill over. In fact, he even said, why don't we build a wall right there in Sandy Springs and let Cobb County pay for it?
Right, that was pretty
Cobb
funny.
County,
Where have
right.
we heard that
Pretty
before? Well, I live in Dunwoody, and we might need to build a wall there too, because I mean, all of us who live on this north side, I think, are preparing for what looks like a really big traffic
Pandemonium
disaster with the opening of the stadium. I think all of us have legitimate concerns. I think the fact that this, on top of the recent decision by the Cobb County Commission to pass an ordinance without public debate to prevent property owners from charging to rent their parking spaces within a half-mile of the radius of the stadium in order to protect the Braves' revenue stream and their parking revenue. I think the Braves make about $5 million a year just on parking. All of this is, this isn't going to sit well, I think, with the people of Cobb County and the rest of us who live within a stone's throw of Cobb County.
Huge story. I don't know how, it didn't get more airplay than it got. But you're exactly right, Jennifer. I mean, you've got the Cobb County Commission essentially denying the property rights of private property owners within a half-mile of the Braves, and doing it with zero public input.
Jeff, let me stop you, though. Let me stop you, because Tim Lee, just as we were taping, said that that was a quote-unquote incorrect AJC story. And so he says that you can get permits now if you live in the neighborhood of the Braves. So he's apparently trying to
Clean that
correct
up.
and
No,
clean it up.
That's not. They're trying to walk it back, and I think that Brian Robinson, who's working for Tim Lee, did a good job of that. Though I'm not so sure that it was the role of the campaign to rebut that story. It seemed to me it would have been the role of the Cobb County government to rebut that story, since they passed the ordinance in the first instance, right? But it was the lack of transparency that you cannot defend. They've got a partner who is opaque and obtuse, and that partner is the Atlanta Braves, and they're making Cobb County government look the same, and it's not a good look for Cobb County, right? Because they're a public government and they need to be held accountable. You're going to pass an ordinance like that and not even have a meeting, not let anybody know. The Tad Leadhead didn't know about it. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Any
It is.
last word on that?
Well, there may not be a problem because of the Braves' record. So nobody's going to go to the game. So
Well, here's my
sad, Alexis.
here's my Phil Kent solution, though, to
Which?
traffic spilling over from Cobb County into Sandy Springs, and that is, I would order Sandy Springs policemen to set up DUI roadblocks right there on all the entry points.
It may come to that.
And that will stop all of this
make some
flow.
extra
So
revenue
memo
for
to the mayor of
I'm sure
Sandy
the Dunwoody
Springs.
police might be there to help if you need extra hands.
You know, you may have seen the other day there was a demonstration down at the Capitol, and it wound over to Immigration's Customs and Control. It was these illegal aliens that were protesting the U.S. Supreme
from
Court
Mars?
decision.
What do you mean?
These are illegal
Aliens?
immigrants.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh.
But it goes back to policing.
Martians?
Here's my point, Jeff. Here's my point. It goes back to policing. 90 minutes, all of these traffic laws and public safety laws were violated until the police finally stepped in and got them out of the streets from blocking traffic. Not good if we're doing this aggressive policing we were just talking about a few minutes ago.
Well, I think it was an unplanned and unpermitted demonstration, so it takes a minute to get all that corrected. But at the
Not
same
90 minutes.
Well, you don't know. I don't know.
Rapid
They
response.
they may have been attending to some serious police business, like the murder rate.
Not only that,
So,
but I mean, you got Capitol Police down there who should be policing exactly that sort of thing. That's why they're there, right?
I agree with you. I agree with you.
It never ceases to amaze me, though, that people who aren't supposed to be here in the first place, who broke our laws to get here, then try to march to make demands on us.
And chaining themselves in the middle of the street.
Well, the thing is, the people wouldn't be here in the first place if there weren't jobs that were offered to them by private business at below.
And you know who want to be locked
rates.
up with them are those greedy employers that get cash under the table and screw the American workers. So I agree with you on that. We're going to talk a little politics, though, in our next segment. So stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
Welcome back to the Georgia Gang. I'm Phil Kent, sitting in for Dick Williams. And let's turn to some Georgia politics. Of course, early voting, can you believe it, starts Tuesday?
How about that?
And we have got primaries in both parties coming up later in the month, so all the campaigns will be gearing up. Alexis, let me turn to you. There's a couple local races I know you're interested in. Give us a little rundown.
Well, I think we've got a big runoff between Ted Jackson, who's the current Fulton County Sheriff, and the former Fulton County Sheriff, Richard Langford. And the way it's shaping up, I think that Ted Jackson is probably going to pull it out. It all depends on turnout, of course, and having the runoff election on July 26th.
That's right.
And then the early voting, as you mentioned, starting this week. It's really going to be interesting to see what kind of turnout we actually
It'll
have.
be abysmal. I
Right.
think we all know that, which is sad. People are on vacation. Jeff, you've got some races you're looking at too. Vernon Jones, for example?
There's an important county commission race out there, and a runoff, and Vernon Jones is in a runoff as well in DeKalb County. Exactly right. You know, but DeKalb County has got, and they're very important races. I think that Vernon probably will prevail, but I don't know. He's got a lot of name recognition and a CEO. He made a lot of advances for the county. And of course, he's no stranger to the General Assembly. That's where he started. But, you know, in DeKalb County, the major races were really decided first time around. That was the district attorney. And we've done a lot of talking about him, and he did not prevail in that race. And of course, the CEO, Michael Thurman.
That's right.
The solicitor race in Fulton County is going to feature, does feature Clint Rucker and Keith Gamage. So that's going to be an interesting one.
That's a good
too.
race to look at. I think Clint Rucker might have the edge, but we'll soon find out. Of course, one of the big races around the state, we talked about Cobb County, and of course, incumbent Tim Lee is in serious trouble with his challenger Mike Boyce, who almost won outright in May. So again, as we all know, turnout. But there's a state house race too in Brookhaven, Jennifer. Megan Hansen, who's been on the Georgia Gang in previous years, going against Alan Cole. What do you think?
I think this is going to be a race that comes down to turnout. I mean, both the top three finishers were all very closely bunched together in the 30% range of the vote. I think that it's going to be, you know, whichever candidate can mobilize their supporters and get the best turnout. It's kind of the way it usually goes in these runoff elections anyway. I'm going to give the slight edge to Megan, though.
Okay. Well, as you know, too, there's a big U.S. congressional primary, the GOP primary in the 3rd District, and that's the seat of retiring Representative Lynn Westmoreland. And since it's such a heavily Republican district, this would be the winner. And Drew Ferguson versus Mike Crane, a state lawmaker, that is hot and heavy. I don't know how that's going to handle. There's a lot of endorsements. Have you followed that?
A little bit. It's the classic sort of establishment candidate versus the insurgent candidate, and Westmoreland came out and backed the more establishment of the two candidates. Ferguson, and then Crane has gotten some pretty powerful endorsements like Senator Ted Cruz.
I saw where Eric Erickson, the talk radio
Erickson from Red State, yes, he as well. I think that you have to kind of give the edge to Crane, just given the mood of the electorate right now, given the mood of going for a more unconventional or insurgent candidate over the more traditional type candidate. So I still think Crane has a bit of an advantage here.
That's interesting. I don't know, Jeff, you know, I would wager that Lynn Westmoreland is very popular in his district, even though he's retiring. And it did surprise me that he got into it that way, especially if he wants to run for governor.
That's what I was going to say. You keep calling him Lynn. I thought his first name was Governor. I don't know that he's retiring. I think that he's just switching gears a little bit. I have every expectation that he'll run for that office, and he will use his popularity, as you say, in that district to do so. Yes.
It'll be interesting to see what happens.
And then, you know, since we're talking a little bit about politics and mentioning the governor's race, I did see where Secretary of State Brian Kemp got into a kerfuffle this week again with the nurses. This time, and removing someone from a state nursing board, and then you don't want to
and replacing it with someone from the cosmetology board.
Well, that's right, and I don't. That's quite a voting block. I would guess you don't want to really tick off
either one. No. Either one, right?
And then Jeff, he just got out of this.
It just got out of the other thing, right? Where you was
voting. There was a data breach that
there was a data breach that affected millions of citizens. So you're talking about Lynn Westmoreland. Here's a guy, if he wanted to run for governor, would have, I think,
tough road.
A tough road ahead. Yes.
Well, that's it for politics this week. I think we're ready for winners and losers in the next segment. Stay with us.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
Welcome back to the Georgia Gang. I'm Phil Kent, sitting in for Dick Williams. Alexis, start us off with winners and losers.
Okay, I'm going to salute Mary Long. She's a longtime community activist and nurse, and a scholarship is being named in her honor at Georgia State University. So congratulations to Mary Long on that wonderful recognition. Also, the Atlanta History Center is my winner. They reopened their new Cornerstone exhibit on the history of the city of Atlanta, and it is amazing. It uses high tech to tell old stories and make them new again. So they're a winner, and they're celebrating their 90th anniversary. Also, the military panel, what is the Hall of Honor at the Atlanta Airport, is open for this weekend's Independence Day.
Honoring the veterans.
Honoring veterans.
That's right.
And that's a wonderful thing. And also their new $4 million piece of art that looks like you're walking through a forest leading from the walkway from Concourse A and B. I can't wait to see that. That should be really wonderful.
Absolutely.
So we can thank Maynard Jackson for setting aside percentage of the budget for artwork for the airport, and it really makes it a wonderful experience.
And Jeffrey?
John Lewis is going to be my winner again for keeping the focus on guns with his meeting here in Atlanta this week. George Will, the very principled conservative columnist, Ronald Reagan's debate coach, and a Pulitzer Prize winner, has first quit the Republican Party because of the Trump candidacy, and has advised fellow principled conservatives to hold their nose and vote for Hillary for 4 years and try again. So he's my winner. Loser, Cobb County government. It's not about Tim Lee. It's about transparency. It's about doing the right thing. It's about protecting the rights of private property owners. This is America. That's what we do. And if I were one of those folks, I'd be suing them already.
All right. Jennifer?
I'd put George Will in the loser category, not the winner category for his little tantrum, but that's just me. My winner is actually one of Georgia's favorite sons, Newt Gingrich, who the Washington Post reported this week is on the short list to be Donald Trump, one of Donald Trump's vice presidential pick. He's been vetted or being vetted. He was asked to submit the paperwork along with Chris Christie. So a little shout out to former Speaker Gingrich for being in the running for that position. And then my loser, you kind of stole my thunder in the last block, Brian Kemp, for the issue with the nurses and on the tails of some of the other problems we've had with voting because of the Secretary of State's office.
Okay, well, I second the motion on that veterans exhibit at the airport. I think that was great. I guess we better make the winner the Peachtree Road Race.
There you go.
That's always a winner. And I drive by Chastain Park and I see all these people have been practicing over the last week. So that's great. And I think that Attorney General Loretta Lynch is my loser this week. All of us have been taught with our journalism backgrounds that if you or your family are the subject of a probe, you really shouldn't be talking to prosecutors. And so I have to make her, where was the sense, just don't talk to Bill Clinton, whose wife is the subject of an FBI. Yes.
Yeah, but here was the thing. He came on her plane. She didn't go talk to him.
She's still
Clinton
the loser.
Step on themselves.
You can talk about it next week.
They get in their way.
You can talk about it next week on the Georgia Gang. We'll see you then.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.